Chapter 64 to 66. The two salamanders glanced at each other and the one on the right side, the black one sighed. Youngsters and their cheekiness, he said in an exasperated tone, to which the salamander on the left, the green one, shrugged. Ray wasn't sure what that shaking gesture was meant to be, but it was apparently an agreement. The black salamander continued. Well then, I am Elder Salam and the esteemed salamander next to me is Elder Mander. Now that we are here, your free roaming through our caverns has come to an end, intruder. We will show you the terror of offending Salam and Mander. Prepare for your doom. The one on the left, Elder Mander, just again shrugged, or better yet shook in agreement, but stayed quiet. Ray expected the fight to begin, so he crouched slightly, preparing for it as he quickened the flow of his chakra and reinforced his muscles, but the two geezers just motionlessly watched him. After a minute of stare-off, Ray blinked in confusion, straightened up, and raised his eyebrow at them as he awkwardly scratched the back of his head. Shouldn't you? I don't know, attack me? He asked. He wanted them to do the first move, as reacting would be better than charging in without knowing their way of fighting. It was then he noticed a slight smirk on Salam's maw. Oh, youngsters nowadays, so impatient. We already did our move. Kihuhiha. He laughed in a senile way. Ray instantly tensed up and discreetly looked around, but was unable to find anything out of ordinary. And so the duo of salamanders and Ray stared at each other in awkward silence for a few more moments. As time passed, Ray watched as the eyebrows of the beast started to twitch. Salam suddenly turned to Mander and asked in an annoyed tone. Oi, did you add layman's wet socks into the recipe? How come the intruder is still standing? That thing is more toxic than Hanzo's underwear. Mander just shook in agreement, but Ray wasn't feeling good when he heard the words recipe, and wet sock, and Hanzo's underwear. His prospects for this battle were getting quite bleak if that's what they wanted to fight him with. He started looking around with mild disgust, his wariness increased by 10 magnitudes when his eyes widened. Shit! He started swaying on his feet and put his palm on his face, his vision blurring slightly. Only the timely input of nature energy into his system stopped him from feeling dizzy. Salamanders equals poison. He quietly grumbled to himself, feeling indignant he didn't realize it sooner. Go figure. The entire air is steeped in a special kind of undetectable poison. Thankfully he kept his eyes on the salamanders. The second they saw Ray swaying, the two senile geezers as if evaporated and bloodlust filled the cavern, and Ray barely managed to push himself to the side, evading another water jet that could cleave him into two pieces. He was about to recollect himself, only for his eyes to widen as Salamander Mander suddenly appeared in front of him and slammed his tail into his body, sending him flying. Only the wall of the cavern stopped his body, making him slid down onto his ass and groan in pain. Ray didn't have time to take a breather as a water bullet, courtesy of Salam, impacted his abdomen, making him bend forward with a silent gasp, breaking a few of his ribs in the process. The poison still coursed through his body, numbing it so it was quite hard to move for him. Yet again, he wasn't given a breather as Mander appeared near him, his tail lashing onto Ray. He did the only thing he could in his battered state. He used Kawarimi and swapped places with his clone, who was smashed into a watery pulp almost instantly. Ray wobbly stood up, holding his stomach in pain, and stared at the two senjutsu-using salamanders. He smiled slightly, even though his smile was broken and resembled more a grimace due to pain. I must admit, you two have supreme teamwork. He wheezed out before chuckling. But the second he said that, both Salam and Mander tensed as they could feel a danger from his hunched-up, hurt form. Suddenly, Ray straightened up, wiping the blood from the corner of his lips while wincing slightly. I also admit that in hindsight, Conan was right, and storming the salamander realm by myself might have been a stupid idea. He clicked his tongue and took a deep breath. Neither Salam nor Mander felt at ease, so they didn't leap at him to continue. Instead, both salamanders could clearly feel the danger in the air, and tensed as chakra started swirling around Ray. You know what's funny? Ray offhandedly asked as he started closing and opening his fist. Nobody ever checks for chakra strings. He quipped, and the chakra swirling around him went towards the floor and condensed into a massive amount of fine threads spreading outwards, dragging themselves on the ground. These then started connecting to an even wider system of threads that was spread through the cavern by the water clones right at the start of the battle. As the previously invisible chakra threads lit up, the entire ground of the salamander caverns looked like one big intricate web. This was Ray's trump card. Since day one, he didn't stop honing his chakra strings. It was his first usable skill, after all. But getting them combat ready, now that was quite a chore. Using the strings to defeat a Chunin was nice and all, but Ray was no longer playing in the casual league. Against Jonins, the strings were most of the time useless, and that was the actual reason why Suna was known for puppetry instead of chakra strings. Hence, Ray had to be creative. The thread started to enwrap around Ray, forming a cocoon that completely covered his figure. For Salam and Mander it resembled something akin to evolving butterfly summon. Multiple thread endings loosely hung from the cocoon, like decorative strips. Salam, the ancient but quiet voice of Mander suddenly hurriedly exclaimed with a warning undertone. Water wall, fast. Salam's eyes widened. He knew Mander was the better sensor amongst them and the jutsu the human was about to unleash was quite powerful if it unnerved Mander so much. Salam slammed his front legs into the water-covered ground of the cavern, snapping a few chakra strings in the process as he pushed half of his chakra into them, getting assistance by Mander as they created quite similar jutsu to the water dome of Ray. 3 layers of water formed 3 domes around the cocoon. The jutsu of Salam was more geared towards preventing escape, so the inner walls were near impenetrable while the outer ones were weaker. While the 2 elders busied themselves with protective layers, the salamanders finally finished dealing with Ray's clones and came to spectate their esteemed elders dealing with the intruder. All this took at most 3 seconds, and inside the water jutsu, the cocoon started changing. The string started revolving around Ray's figure, creating a spectacle no different than Hyuga's Kaden. Despite that, it didn't have the protective function of Kaden. Inside, Ray smirked. Well, time to fire this party up. His chakra flared. The strings were now spinning at insane speeds, grinding against each other. All it took was a slight spark of Katan and Futon chakra, supported with nature energy. Outside, Salam and Mander watched the water of their protections. This should be enough. Salam said, but Mander didn't answer. Suddenly, his body went rigid. Salam saw and uncountable small crimson-red droplets of condensed flames shattered the 3 layers of water domes as they went through it like a knife through butter. As the string spun, the previously loosely hanging thread endings were now flying around in a swirling pattern. The second the cocoon lit up with the crimson fire, these flying endings created a whirlwind of a crimson whirlpool of fire, the sheer speed tearing apart droplets of it, showering the entire salamander realm with highly concentrated fire capable of burning even Katan itself. These crimson flames were the direct opposite of Ray's blue Suetun/Katan flames. Their potency reached and slightly surpassed even Blaze release. Their sole purpose was to kill it with fire, even if it is the fire itself. The salamanders were disorderly running around, trying to avoid the shower of crimson death. Many of them already died due to being stupidly brave and trying to block them with water jutsu only for the droplets to go through the jutsu first, and the caster second. The walls of the caverns were burning and the ever-covered grounds with water were now dry. These flames could spread alongside the chakra strings and as the entire cavern was covered in ray strings. The ground flared up with crimson whirlpool as the web of strings became a burning death trap. Salam and Mander watched with horrified gazes as the fire started to engulf their realm in its entirety, both pushing enormous amounts of senjutsu chakra to create a safe haven from flames on the ground and in the sky with their senjutsu-enhanced water jutsu. As the minutes of the downpour of fire ticked away, the 2 elders gathered around 100 surviving salamanders in their water barrier. Their hearts could only ache as they saw that those of their kin still outside were most likely already burned to death. Fortunately, they had enough strength to create a place safe from the crimson hell. 30 minutes. That's how long it took for the spinning to stop, and Ray hummed in appreciation. He was not yet that proficient with the jutsu and had to channel his chakra for a long time. He nevertheless stopped supplying chakra in the 3rd minute and the spinning sustained the jutsu for 10 times as long. He made the cocoon open to witness the effects of his jutsu with his eyes, and as he did so, his jaw dropped to the floor. The cavern was no more. Above him, a clear night sky was highlighted crimson as the hellish crimson flames still burned strong all around him. Ray smiled. Damn, that's way better than I thought. These flames will last at least for 3 days with the chakra I supplied. He shook his head but then winced, showing a bitter expression. Shit, Conan will scold me. I have at least 2 broken ribs and 6 cracked ones with multiple torn muscles. The Mander did pack quite a punch, Tsunade could learn a lot from him. He said as his eyes turned to resigned sad gaze full of unwillingness as he used his seal to enter his dimension. Ray appeared in his dimension and the first sight that greeted him was Tsunade and Conan in their underwear and apron kneeling in the front hall, both showing excitement. This excitement however quickly fell as they noticed his mangled, clearly quite injured form. He watched Tsunade's face morph from happy and teasing one into a worry-stricken horror-filled one as she noticed his expression twisted in pain. She instantly jumped towards him and started to go over his body with her diagnostic jutsu, her eyes teary. It was then that Ray remembered that in anime, she was a very unstable woman due to the death of her clan, brother, and then lover. Maybe I should try to avoid being injured. Ray thought as he felt Tsunade biting her lower lip while intently healing his ribs with her medical jutsu. His eyes turned to Conan and, he rather turned back to Tsunade. He was too ashamed to face her right now after so many reassurances that it will be alright and he would face no danger. You underestimated them. Conan said in an exasperated tone to which Ray could only awkwardly chuckle. Why did I expect this to go differently? Conan huffed, giving Ray a piercing look. As of now, I forbid you to charge into danger without me by your side. At least one of us has to be the voice of reason. Conan exclaimed. Now, you will eat the food I and Tsunade painstakingly prepared. You will take a bath with us. You will then cuddle with us and you will go to sleep to recuperate your injuries. As much trust as I have in Tsunade's skills, I want you to get proper rest. You are a mess. I don't think I ever saw you quite so injured. Seeing Ray's mouth open in protest, Conan strongly added, her hands on her hips. End of discussion. Yes, dear. Ray lowered his head, making Conan's eyes soften. He then sighed and continued in a grumbling tone as he crossed his arms. Never in my wildest dreams would I think that Senjutsu would pack quite such a punch. It must have enhanced taijutsu at least by the factor of 5. I felt as if a truck hit me. Ray said, making both Tsunade and Conan look at each other, neither knowing what truck was, but they both decided it had to be a fearsome monster if Ray thought it hit so hard. Ray then smiled. But I've got it. He took a stasis scroll out of his pocket, showing it to Tsunade. Tsu, this is my gift for you and I am pretty sure it will help you to improve your creation rebirth. I really hope this will help you get rid of the need for burning your own lifespan. He said with a smile to her. Tsunade didn't take it, her hands still busying themselves with Ray's wounds. For her, he was the priority right now. Whatever that scroll held could wait. Ray just chuckled as he saw the interest in her eyes despite her not taking it. She was a medic first and foremost, so anything that could help her improve her craft was greatly intriguing for her. That's why Ray chose to get the Axolotl for her despite the danger. He thought his self-storage seal would be enough as insurance, but he was apparently wrong. He was still quite weak when it came to more experienced legendary fighters, it seemed. An oversight he would definitely correct at a later date. After he was healed, he listened to Conan's demands. She was right, he needed to recuperate and fast. They still had a mission to complete. The next day, the trio was in the clearing in front of their house. Tsunade held the still-sealed stasis scroll, expectantly looking at it while her expression was akin to a child during Christmas Eve. She was almost glowing from curiosity and Ray enjoyed the sight very much. It was far from the bitter old hag in the anime and it brought his heart untold joy that he could transform that into the happy, excited, and carefree girl in front of him. Tsunade turned to him after she was done eyeing the scroll and while almost bouncing, she asked him. What is it? Ray chuckled. Why don't you open it and see for yourself? He said and held back after her lips turned into a small pout. Conan just sat next to Ray on the blanket and was preparing the picnic basket she brought with her. She knew what was in the scroll and knew it would probably be important to Tsunade, but since she wasn't very medical savvy, it didn't matter to her. Tsunade decided to open the scroll and instantly, a huge salamander popped out of it. She looked at it a bit skeptically and then turned to Ray with a deadpan look. It's a salamander. Really? She eyed Ray, not amused at all. Don't give me that look. Ray calmly coaxed. It is a salamander with an even bigger healing factor than you when using creation rebirth. He told her and she snapped her head back onto the unconscious beast, her eyes instantly started sparkling while morphing into something Ray thought he would only see on Jiraiya's face when perving on women or Orochimaru's when perving on boys. Damn, she is indeed one of the 3 Sannin. Ray was inwardly freaking out at the gaze she was giving the beast. He decided to be far, far away when she plays with it. Just to be sure. Conan chuckled and leaned closer to Ray. You are hoping Tsunade will be too preoccupied with her new experiments to miss us jumping into that trap, aren't you? She whispered knowingly, earning herself an admitting gaze from Ray as he shrugged. He had no intention of letting Tsunade but into their mission and definitely didn't want her to worry. He leaned even closer to Conan and tenderly claimed her lips. They kissed for a moment and when they separated Ray softly smiled. Will you keep that a secret from me? He asked and Conan dazedly nodded with a bit of a blush on her cheeks as she bashfully turned around, busying herself with preparing the food. After that, they both watched Tsunade testing the healing factor of the beast with sparkling eyes as the blood squirted everywhere. Damn. Ray winced. I am really glad I had the foresight to keep the beast in unconsciousness. He dryly stated, making Conan deadpan at him. Yeah, but these seals must have been quite something since even having its head open didn't wake it up. She said. Before Ray could answer, Tsunade shouted at him. Thank you. She quickly approached them and embraced Ray tightly. With this, I will be able to not only perfect my creation rebirth but also my strengthening technique. She elatedly said. Now, more tests. She almost squealed, released Ray, and skipped back towards the salamander without even glancing at the food Conan prepared for her. That afternoon was one of the most traumatizing experiences both Ray and Conan ever went through. They learned a lot. They learned that with a high regeneration factor, it is hard to die due to blood loss. They learned that regrowth of the salamander's limbs lasts approximately 1.66 s when stimulated with nature energy. They learned that opening someone's head is indeed as disgusting as it sounds. To be honest, they decided to never again be present when Tsunade is having her fun. Rei and Conan were high in the sky on Conan's paper platform, watching a noble mansion that was supposed to be their target. Somewhere in there should be the daughter of the noble who requested them to save her. At first glance, the mansion wasn't all that much protected. Some subpar samurais here and there, but that was all. For a ninja, this was a dream come true. An easy mission with high pay. At least, that was how it appeared. There are 20 jonin and 30 chunin. Conan grimaced as her scouts in the form of small bugs made from paper gave her the intel they gathered. Both her and Rei could fight multiple ninjas each, but 40. The problem was, this was supposed to be a rescue mission, so they can't just nuke it from the sky and be done with it. They would have to go there and actually search, which means getting attacked. The target, Rei almost drowned in sarcasm, is enjoying herself being massaged by very burly servants who have quite a lot of chakra for civilians. She sure doesn't look like someone kidnapped. Both of her eyes are covered with cucumber slices and her expression is more like someone who is having the time of their life. Rei informed Conan. Over time, his nature sensing became quite strong. He could now see the surroundings through it. While he was somewhat limited and had to focus a lot to be able to do that, it was a nice skill to have for scouting. While Conan's papers could sense ninjas and their chakra, Rei got more visual output that told him much more than just general reserves, and if someone is or is not ninja, supposing the person was not restraining their chakra. Their difference in the nature attunement showed. This kind of nature sensing was far above what Conan was capable of, and that's why they both scouted the mansion with their respective techniques and decided to then compare the notes. Hearing about the state of the supposedly kidnapped girl, Conan rolled her eyes. So, what's the plan? This is obviously a trap. She asked. Rei started pondering about it when his eyes trailed towards the right wing of the mansion. That, he pointed at it, is empty, right? He asked Conan, who nodded in affirmation, which made Rei widely smile. I see, then we will. Barbo Rirente was massaging the bait while resisting the urge to groan at this kind of mission. The woman was a chore to be around. Barbo, I am hungry. Barbo, I want a massage. Barbo, I am horn dash. Barbo had enough. He was supposed to be a respected jonin of IWA. And yet, here he was, satisfying every desire of a woman that was spoiled rotten. All because she would bait their target to this place. The downpour. The mysterious Kiri duo of S-rank demolition specialists who surpassed even the demolition corps of IWA in the seer destructibility. Quite frankly, the Tsuchikage was not amused by their existence. In the past, when someone needed a demolition expert, they knew to go to IWA, but that was no longer the truth. Now, IWA had a competition and the old man Inoki didn't like the competition. Not at all. Not when they obviously were so much better than Iwa's top demolition experts. Hence, the current situation. He, the idiot, accepted the mission of hunting the downpour down without even asking about the specifics, and now he was saddled with Kimiko Hyugaru, the spoiled nuisance. It wasn't that the woman wasn't pretty. She was gorgeous. Not a kunoichi kind of gorgeous, but more of a sheltered kind. The problem was how demanding it was to be with her. He was a ninja, and even he was starting to feel tired. Barbo hoped their target would pop up sometime soon, or he just might drop from the sheer exhaustion due to being ordered around by the woman. Oh, why? Why was I so stupid to take this undercover mission? I can't even complain now, can I? If I did, I would be an even bigger laughingstock for my subordinates. He mentally wept. Not that I am not a laughingstock now. I was dragged against my will to Kimiko's chambers, after all. Me. One of the top assassins of IWA. Sob. Needless to say, Barbo's subordinates had the laugh of their lives on his expense at that. Suddenly, Kimiko arched her hand backward and raised her hand towards her head, taking one cucumber slice off of her face. Her eyes connected with Barbo's. Oh, shit. Here we go again. He mentally groaned but gave her a sweet smile to which the woman beamed. Barbu, Kimiko's whiny voice resounded through the room, I am bored. She pouted, pretending to be pitiful. It took every bit of Barbo's past experience and determination to not fuck this mission up to not scowl at the woman. The four subordinates of his who were massaging various parts of Kimiko's body were not so discreetly glancing at him with hidden snickers too. This was routine. She was bored and they instantly knew it meant Barbo being made into entertainment. Last time, he had to do a geisha show for her. While his team members watched. The woman was ruining his reputation without even knowing it. Barbo gulped. This. Kimmy dash, he didn't finish that sentence as a sudden booming sound resounded through the entire mansion, startling the occupants. Barbo's eyes sparkled in excitement, hoping that their enemies were finally here, and he quickly jumped towards the window. His excitement turned into bewilderment as he saw the entire right wing of the mansion was almost leveled to the ground by massive tree trunks falling from the sky. What the actual fuck? Since when does it rain trees? Barbo quietly asked when he saw even more tree trunks falling onto the right wing. It didn't take long for his eyes to widen. Fuck. He snapped around towards his subordinates and shouted. Out of the mansion, quick. Ray and Conan watched as the tree trunks they created were taken out of the dimension storage right above the empty part of the mansion through the multi-W link on Conan's paper slice that was floating in the sky. Ray added his own twist into it and wove genjutsu into the entire thing. His perfect chakra control allowed him to be quite creative, but he decided on a simple approach this time. He didn't affect the people, rather the environment. Through light refraction he made it seem as if the trunks falling from the sky were slowly expanding their landing radius, therefore, it looked like the entire mansion was under the threat to be destroyed by them. For those in the central part, it looked like the left wing was the next target, and for those in the left wing, it looked as if the next target was the central part of the mansion. It wasn't even that hard for Ray to do this, and he really doubted this jutsu could be classified as genjutsu, but it created an illusion so there. It was more of a wind and water manipulation in the sky. This actually made it impossible to kai it since it wasn't created by influencing the chakra in their body. It was akin to a big henge on the entire sky. They are coming out, Conan said, making Ray smile. Their plan to get their targets outside of the mansion worked. The illusion made it seem the trunks started raining all around, so they had no choice but to gather in one place, and some of the previously seemingly harmless if a bit muscled servants instantly gained a dangerous atmosphere around them, spooking the civilians in the group. Ray chuckled at that. The Chunins are going to blow their own cover. Just look at how they are projecting their battle readiness around. Civilians or not, the others started to notice. Ray commented, observing various jonin in the group curse. What made Ray surprised, though, was that the samurai guards apparently were not informed about ninjas being present and started warily glaring at the Chunins, their hands on the handles of their swords. This made Ray's lips widen into a nasty shit-eating grin. Oh, well, let's start this party with a bang. He shrugged and threw a kunai with an exploding tag into the sky. The second the explosion loudly went off, three things happened. First, both ninja and samurai drew their respective weapons. For samurai it was katanas, and for the ninjas, it was mostly kunai, with some taking out something different. Secondly, the civilians started to panic and run around like headless chickens, obstructing the visibility of the combatants and creating mayhem. There were around 50 ninjas and give or take 100 samurai, but there were 100 civilians too. And all of them were confined in a small clearing in front of the mansion due to the light refraction illusion. It was an unorganized mess. Thirdly, and this was very beneficial but incredibly surprising, due to the chaos created by the panicking civilians, the commanders of both, the group of ninjas and the group of samurais, couldn't relay orders. As the samurais saw the ninja draw their weapons, they did what a good guard should do. They attacked unknown armed assailants. And ninjas reacted. The entire clearing started to become bloody and even more chaotic. The ninja might have been a lot stronger than the samurai, but they had to avoid harming civilians, so no strong jutsu were allowed, evening the odds slightly. Also, samurai were more experienced in moving in chaotic battlefields and in a direct clash. The ninjas certainly did start to take some casualties. Both Conan and Ray used this situation to get inside the mayhem, hinging into civilians while also lowering their chakra reserves to civilian level. They ran straight towards Kimiko and saw Barbo deflecting the blows of 3 samurai while trying to talk them out of attacking. Nevertheless, he didn't have time to give orders to his subordinates. Ray resisted a chuckle and turned to their target, Kimiko, who sat on the ground, utterly confused and frightened. The girl was a quivering mess by now as blood, gore, and guts flew through the sky whenever a samurai or a ninja scored a hit on the other. Ray gestured with his head towards Kimiko and Conan went off, with a nod. He approached one of Barbo's enemies and stabbed him from behind. Killing one, the other 2 instinctively turned towards him, but it was too late as 2 kunai impacted their abdomens, making them fall to the ground with groans. Ray looked at startled Iwa Jonin clad in servant's clothes and quickly said, trying to sound distressed. Come. Lady Kimiko is in danger. Barbo's eyes widened, his eyes snapping in the direction of the girl, and then his world went black. Ray stood above the slumped form of the Jonin, rolling his eyes. Damn, man, a guy takes out 3 samurai in front of you and you get distracted. You must really like that Kimiko girl. He snickered and put a tag with a restraining seal on Barbo's forehead, storing his unconscious body into a stasis storage seal. With that, he left the battlefield. Author note. Okay, I've seen a lot of people ask why Ray had to use a jutsu that could wipe out salamanders. The answer is simple, he was forced to. The salamander elders broke quite a few bones and tore a whole lot of muscles by his senjutsu/taijutsu attacks, plus their ninjutsu powered by senjutsu chakra, and voila, you get utterly outclassed MC. As much as I've written, the self-transport seal is instantaneous, and there is still a quite short window to hit him, hence it is not as good as Hirashin, nor is it meant to be. The seal is not a combat-oriented seal, after all. That's why it's not as used in a fight as it could be otherwise. The next thing is, Ray needed that small window of time to activate it and didn't like his chances of not being attacked during it since the taijutsu salamander was fast enough to completely surprise him. The big, fiery attack was in the end, only a way to get him that bit of time, and since he used it, he wanted to see the result. Simple as that. If someone doesn't like that, nothing I can do about that, laughing face.